Hey everybody, this is Ty. I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin Private, the fork of Bitcoin in Z Classic. There's a lot of talk and a lot of hype about this coin right now. So what is Bitcoin Private? My opinion on it, and moving forward, what am I going to do to try and make as much money as possible during this fork? I do believe there's a lot of money to be made. I'm going to give you my personal strategy. Please do your own research, and this is not financial advice. So first, what is Bitcoin Private? This is a fork of Bitcoin in Z Classic, like I said before. Each person holding either currency will get a 1-to-1 ratio during the fork. So for example, if you have 1 Bitcoin and 3 Z Classic, you will be rewarded 4 Bitcoin Private during the fork. There will be a snapshot of whoever has these coins on February 28th. And then 2 days later, the mainnet will launch and the fork will happen and you will be rewarded the coins. I do think this is kind of cool because I haven't seen a coin that actually takes 2 coins and does an airdrop on both of the coins. This is the first of its kind that I know of. There might be another one, but let me know if there is another one. Now, what is it? What is some of the features? Some argue that it's the best of both worlds. The privacy, obviously, Bitcoin Private. It uses the ZK snarks in Zcash and Zclassic. Zcash and Zclassic are basically the exact same thing, except for Zclassic does not have the developers tax. With Zcash, 20% of the mining goes to the developers. So Zclassic does not have that. Personally, I like Zclassic better because of this, but I don't really hold either until now. Now, with the privacy, it does use the ZK snark, so you don't know the sender or the receiver. Everything is anonymous. It is going to be a decentralized system. There is no central point of control. They do say it's going to be fast. And I guess fast meaning that they might reduce the block speed. Currently with Bitcoin, the block speed is 10 minutes. They haven't announced, the white paper is supposed to come out this week, so they haven't really announced what the block speed is going to be. If I were to guess, it's probably going to be the same as Zcash or Zclassic, which I think is a 2.5-minute block speed. They may even reduce it to like a minute and a half or a minute, but if I were to guess, it's going to be 2.5 minutes. Along with the reduced block times, they are going to increase the block size. Rhett, the main founder, is a Bitcoin Cash. He likes Bitcoin Cash, and so he agrees with the larger block size. If I were to guess, it's probably going to be 2 megabytes. We're not going to know until the white paper comes out. It'll probably start at 2, and then if this gains popularity enough where those blocks start getting full, it'll increase to 4 and then maybe 8. Next, it will be open source, which, I mean, that's almost a must with coins now. Meaning you can look at the GitHub, who's committing to GitHub, how often, what actually they're doing to the code. Community driven, I think this is probably the most important thing this coin has going for it. It has a huge community. It has over 70 people working on this and then over 20 developers. So there is a lot of people involved with it. And this keeps growing. This has grown a ton in the last month. Next one is the fair start. There is no pre-mine. I hate coins with pre-mine, so that's important. There is no pre-mine where it's like a 30% pre-mine or something like that. Like I said, the hard fork, the snapshot of the balances will happen on February 28th, and then the mainnet and the hard fork will happen 2 days later. Meaning on February 28th, all of the Bitcoin balances and the Z Classic balances, there will be a snapshot, and anybody with that balance will be rewarded a 1-to-1 ratio if they have it in a wallet and that supports it. They have a new wallet that came out called Electrum. It's with Z Classic, so you can move your Z Classic to that wallet to be sure and get your Bitcoin private coins. There is no exchanges that I know of that are supporting this yet. If I were to guess, though, there's talk on the Twitter that Binance is going to pick it up. I think Binance has a really good shot of it just because there's so much hype on it. If Binance picks it up and supports the hard fork, then you could keep your Z Classic coins on Binance. Now, Bittrex does currently have Z Classic, but they have not announced if they're going to support the fork. If they do support the fork, my personal strategy, and we'll talk about that, is keep my Z Classic coins on Bittrex and then unload it as soon as the snapshot happens. So if you have it in your wallet, there's going to be a long delay. For those of you that may have it on a exchange, you're going to have advantage of unloading those coins. And we know usually what happens with forks, as soon as that fork happens, it usually dumps, and I think this is going to be a huge dump as soon as that fork happens. Now, the Bitcoin private team, let's take a look at that because I do have a couple things to say about it, especially about the founder. His name is Rhett Creighton or Creighton. I think it's Creighton. He has been involved with a few different things. He had a 2-hour long interview with Richard Hart. Great interview. I like the guy. I think he's smart, but Richard Hart called him a pump and dumper because he has been involved with quite a bit of different projects. He was involved in Z Classic, and he has said that he's going to continue to contribute to Z Classic, which I kind of doubt. I think Z Classic is going to dump, and I mean this is his new baby. Why is he going to spend time on this when he has a new baby? There's also, he was involved with Wellcoin. Not many people know about Wellcoin because let me look at the website here. So you can see Wellcoin, he was the creator of Wellcoin. And here's what Wellcoin did. It pumped a little bit, and then, I mean, this thing has no volume whatsoever, and there's no market cap. And so he does go from project to project pretty quickly. If he's doing this, I hope he sticks with it and doesn't get bored and create a new project, because with his track record, he does create projects and then dumps it and goes to the next biggest thing. I think he's going to stick with Bitcoin private. I think he sees this as a big deal. I think he's going to stick with it for a while, but his track record is not that great at making coins and then going to a different project. So let's take a look at, most of all, the chart of what's happening. Z Classic has been absolutely pumping right now. And so it's gone from, a couple months ago to $2. And as soon as they announced Bitcoin private, it started pumping like crazy to over $200. It did have a drawback, and now it's really pumped today. And actually, today was when I got in it. I was really wasn't really sure about it, and I still am not very sure about it. But I think there's a lot of money to be made on it, and I think this Z Classic is going to continue to pump. Now, you can look back with Z Classic. There was another pump, and you might wonder what that was. It pumped to 12 million off, a 50-cent coin. Now, this was because of another fork called Zen. And so Zen was, if you had any Z Classic, you got Zen. If you had Z Classic, you got Zen out of it. And that's really why it pumped. And then as soon as that fork happened, it dropped to pretty much nothing. And then as soon as Bitcoin private gets announced, it just pumps like crazy, and people are excited about Bitcoin private. Now let's take a look at the Z Classic Twitter, because if you plan on holding Z Classic, I think that is a terrible decision, and I'll tell you why. We can look in May, and then there's really, they're talking about Zen, and then that happens, and then boom, they just fall off. There's no talk at all. And then from August to December, there was no talk, and then December, they talk about Bitcoin private. I don't think Rhett is going to continue to really do anything with Z Classic, but here's what I'm going to do. As soon as that snapshot happens, and I hope one of the exchanges supports the snapshot, whether it's Binance or Bittrex, but I think it's going to completely dump. And I think it's going to dump to possibly $20, $30, possibly that very first day. And it's going to take people a lot longer to move it over to exchange and then dump it if they have it in a wallet. So I want to keep my coins on the exchange and then dump it as soon as that snapshot happens. And I think it's going to dump to about $20, $30. And then the following 2 weeks, it could go down to about $5. What I'm going to do with Z Classic is I'm going to get rid of it as soon as possible and then take the Bitcoin private. Now, if it goes down to $1 to $2, the track record on this coin is it's used as forks, but I don't know if it's going to be used as another fork. But if it's $1, $2, it might be worth picking some up, because if it's used as another big fork, it could go from $100 to $200 like it's done here. I don't know if it will, but it might be a risk you want to take on that. And if it does go down to $1, I think it might be worth it, because for the reward, I would love to have this coin when it was $1 and then got pumped to $200. That's what my personal strategy is going to be and what I think is going to happen. Because you can look at Zen, what happened, and then look at what's happening with Bitcoin Private. Personally, I think Z Classic, the fork or the snapshot happens in 15 days. So that's a long time to continue to pump this. I think this thing is going to pump to $300 to $500. My strategy is if it gets to about 475 or 450, I'm probably going to dump it before the fork. I think a lot of people are going to dump it before that fork because they know it's just going to be dumped to $20, $30 right after the fork. So what they're doing is looking for a quick return, and they don't care about the Bitcoin private because they don't, really see the vision in it. I'd love to have the Bitcoin private because I think, I think it could do well. There's a lot of hype involved with it. We can look at the Bitcoin private Twitter, and they have 32,000 people involved, and Twitter is just roaring about this. A lot of big people about it. I'm a fundamental guy, but what I've seen lately is hype. You can make a lot of money with hype, but don't stay in hyped coins because it doesn't seem to stay hyped very long. So they do have a lot of followers. They have a big Discord, and I think Bitcoin Private really could do pretty decent. What I think is going to happen with Bitcoin Private is I think it will be dumped almost, right away after that fork. As soon as people get those coins, it's not going to be dumped tremendously, but we've seen this on almost every single Bitcoin fork. Those coins are dumped right away, and then later that day or 2 days later, there's a small bump. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to dump it right away. It'll probably dip and then it'll probably pump a little bit. And I'm going to try and sell it on that next pump, depending on how big that pump is. That pump isn't big enough, then I'm going to hold it for 2 to 3 months because I think it could do pretty well. I'm not going to do this long term. I'm not going to do Bitcoin private like a year, 2 years because I don't, I don't know. Who knows? It depends how much development goes. It could put a run for its money on Bitcoin Cash. It could do really well. But I'm going to probably try and exit both of them and try and make as much money as possible. Now on Z Classic, everybody knows this coin is worthless. So whatever you're buying this coin right now is what you're kind of thinking Bitcoin private is going to be. And with all the hype, I think people might think, Bitcoin private could be, $400 or $500 before that hype. Personally, that's what I'm going to do with this fork. Let me know what you're going to do. I for sure, absolutely positive it's going to dump right after the snapshot, and then every single Bitcoin fork has dumped. That altcoin has dumped, and so I think it's going to dump and then maybe make a small pump and then do decently long term, like 2-3 months. And depending on how much community is in this, it could put Bitcoin Cash a run for its money, but it's way too early to really say for sure on any of this. I do think there is a lot of money to be made short term, and I think this is still like a pretty decent price to buy it because I think it's going to be pumped way more than $150 before the snapshot. Tell me what you think. Do you like the coin? Do you believe in the vision? Are you in this to try and make some money before the fork, or what are you doing and what do you think? Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe and like and comment if you have any questions. Thank you.